Kara Mensah was going to kill Kang Joon-ho. Not today. Not this week. But soon. She had infiltrated his fortress disguised as a housekeeper, mapped every exit, identified his routines, and located the poison she would slip into his evening tea. The man who ordered her father's execution would die choking on his own blood, and Kara would disappear into the Seoul night before his body went cold. That was the plan. Clean. Final. Justice. Then a 6-year-old boy with his father's eyes asked her to braid his hair. And everything Kara thought she knew about revenge shattered like glass. The cemetery had been empty that morning 3 months ago when Kara stood over her father's grave in the rain. Samuel Mensah, 1965 to 2023. Beloved father, devoted servant of peace. The headstone didn't mention that he'd been a diplomatic aide who discovered a human trafficking network running through Seoul's shipping docks. It didn't mention that he'd threatened to expose the operation to Interpol. It didn't mention that 2 days later, his car had been T-boned by a truck at an intersection where the traffic cameras mysteriously malfunctioned. The police called it an accident. Kara's mother, grief-hollowed and broken, believed them. But Kara had found her father's notes hidden in his office. Names, dates, shipping manifests. And at the center of it all, one name circled in red ink with 3 question marks beside it. Kang Joon-ho. Kara had spent 6 months learning everything about the man. 38 years old. Inherited his father's organization at 25 and expanded it into one of Seoul's most feared syndicates. Legitimate businesses on the surface, maritime shipping, real estate, import-export. Underneath, weapons trafficking, political bribery, and human cargo that moved through the port of Busan like ghosts. He was untouchable. Protected by money, connections, and a reputation for ruthlessness that made even rival gangs hesitate. But every fortress had a weakness. Kara found his in a job posting. The Kang estate needed domestic staff. She applied under a false name, Kara Adams, with forged credentials and a fabricated work history. The head housekeeper, a stern woman named Mrs. Cho, hired her on the spot. Apparently good help was hard to find when your employer was a known criminal. The estate itself was a monument to blood money. 20,000 square feet of steel and glass perched on a hillside overlooking Seoul. Surrounded by walls topped with cameras and armed guards who patrolled the perimeter in shifts. Inside, the decor was coldly beautiful. Marble floors, minimalist furniture. Art that probably cost more than most people's homes. Felt like a mausoleum. Kara's room was in the staff wing. A small space with a single bed, a narrow window, and a lock that didn't work. She didn't care. She wasn't planning to stay long. 2 weeks to learn Joon-ho's schedule. 2 weeks to confirm he was alone when he took his evening tea in the study. 2 weeks to acquire the ricin she'd researched, a poison that mimicked a heart attack. Then one night, 1 cup, and Samuel Mensah's death would be avenged. She saw Joon-ho for the first time on her 3rd day. He was in the main office, visible through the half-open door as Kara mopped the hallway. Tall, easily 6'2", with the kind of build that came from discipline, not vanity. Sharp-featured, black hair pushed back from his forehead. A suit that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. He stood behind a massive desk, hands braced on the surface, leaning toward a man who sat across from him looking like he wanted to melt into the chair. "I gave you 3 months, Joon-ho said. His voice was low, controlled, but edged with something that made Kara's skin prickle. "You've had 4. Where's my money?" The man stammered something Kara couldn't hear. Joon-ho's expression didn't change. "Sangmin." A second man stepped forward from the shadows, lean and predatory in a dark suit. He placed a file on the desk and opened it. Even from the hallway, Kara could see photographs. The stammering man's face went white. "Your daughter," Joon-ho said quietly. "She's at Yonsei University, isn't she? Scholarship student. Very bright. It would be a shame if something happened to distract her from her studies." "Please," the man whispered. "Please, I just need another week." "You had your time." Joon-ho straightened, adjusting his cuffs. "Sangmin will escort you out. If I don't have my money by Friday, your daughter will receive some very upsetting news about her father's extracurricular activities." Kara watched the man stumble out, Sangmin's hand clamped on his shoulder. She gripped the mop handle so hard her knuckles went white. This was the man she'd come to kill. This monster who threatened children to collect debts. Her father had tried to stop him, and he died for it. 2 weeks. Then Junho would join him. Kara turned to leave and froze. A little boy stood at the end of the hallway, partially hidden behind a marble column. He couldn't have been older than 6, small for his age, with dark hair that fell into eyes too large and too solemn for a child's face. He wore pajamas covered in cartoon lions and clutched a stuffed animal to his chest, the same tawny creature from his clothes. He stared at Kara. She stared back. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he asked in careful English, "Are you the new helper lady?" Kara's heart hammered. She glanced toward the office. Junho was still inside. But shouldn't this child be in bed? It was past 9 at night. She looked back at the boy and managed a nod. "Yes. I'm Kara." The boy stepped out from behind the column. Up close, Kara could see the shadows under his eyes, the way he held himself with a careful stillness that reminded her of trauma survivors twice his age. "I'm Miho," he said. Then, glancing at her hair, elaborately braided in cornrows she'd done herself that morning, he added, "You look like the princess from my book. The one who's brave." Something in Kara's chest cracked. She knelt down to his level, forcing a smile. "What's your lion's name?" Miho looked at the stuffed animal, then back at her. "Guardian. He protects me when I'm scared." "That's a very good name," Kara said softly. "Does he do a good job?" Miho's face crumpled slightly. "Sometimes. But he couldn't protect my mom. She went away and she's not coming back." Before Kara could respond, footsteps echoed from the office. She stood quickly, grabbing her mop. Junho emerged, Sangmin behind him, and stopped when he saw his son. "Miho." His voice changed completely, softening in a way that startled Kara. "What are you doing up?" "I had a bad dream," Miho said quietly. Junho's jaw tightened. He crossed the hallway and crouched down eye level with the boy. "The same one." Miho nodded. For a moment, Junho just looked at his son, and Kara saw something she didn't expect. Helplessness. Raw and unguarded. Then he scooped Miho up in his arms, the boy's head tucking into his father's shoulder, and carried him down the hallway without another word. Sangmin lingered, watching Kara with eyes that missed nothing. "You're new." "Started this week," Kara said, keeping her voice neutral. He smiled thin and sharp. "Be careful around the boy. The boss is sensitive about him." "Noted." Sangmin left. Kara stood alone in the hallway, pulse still racing, replaying the scene in her head. The monster who just threatened a man's daughter had carried his own son to bed with heartbreaking gentleness. It didn't make sense. Monsters didn't love. They didn't cradle their children like they were made of glass. Unless they weren't monsters at all. Unless they were just men who did monstrous things. Kara shook her head. No. She couldn't afford to see Junho as human. Humanizing him meant hesitation. Hesitation meant failure. She had a mission. 2 weeks. Then justice. But that night, lying in her narrow bed, she kept seeing Miho's face. The shadows under his eyes. The way he'd called his stuffed lion guardian. The tremor in his voice when he mentioned his mother. And she couldn't help but wonder what kind of nightmares a 6-year-old had that left him wandering the halls at night looking for comfort. The next morning, Mrs. Cho intercepted Kara in the kitchen. "You met the young master last night." It wasn't a question. Of course the staff knew everything. Kara nodded. Briefly. "Mr. Kong has requested you assist with Miho's care," Mrs. Cho said, her expression unreadable. "The boy doesn't sleep well. Doesn't eat well. Won't let anyone touch his mother's things. But he apparently asked about you this morning. Asked if the princess lady was still here." Kara's stomach twisted. "I'm just a housekeeper." "You're whatever Mr. Kong says you are." Mrs. Cho's voice was firm but not unkind. "Miho's mother died 14 months ago. Cancer. Since then the boy has been difficult. Withdrawn. The last nanny quit because he wouldn't speak to her for 3 weeks. If you can reach him, even a little, Mr. Kong will be grateful." Grateful. The word tasted like ash. Kara didn't want Junho's gratitude. She wanted his life. But she nodded. I'll do my best. That afternoon she found Miho in the garden. He sat under a cherry tree, its branches bare in the late autumn chill, building something with sticks and stones. Guardian lay beside him in the grass. When Miho saw Kara, his face lit up in a way that made her chest ache. You came back, he said. I work here, Kara said gently, sitting down beside him. I'm not going anywhere. Liar, a voice whispered in her head. You're leaving the moment Junho stops breathing. Miho showed her his construction, a lopsided house made of twigs. I'm building a castle for Guardian, so he doesn't get scared at night. That's very thoughtful, Kara said. Can I help? Miho considered this seriously, then handed her a stick. You can make the walls stronger. Castles need strong walls. They worked in silence for a while, Kara following Miho's careful instructions. The boy was intelligent, methodical, placing each twig with precision. But every few minutes, he'd glance at her, as if checking to make sure she was still there. Why do you braid your hair like that? He asked eventually. It's part of my culture, Kara explained. Where I'm from, lots of people wear their hair in braids. Where are you from? Ghana. It's in Africa. Miho's eyes widened. Is that far away? Very far. Did you have to leave your family? The question hit like a fist. Kara swallowed. Yes. Me too, Miho said quietly. My mom left. She didn't want to, but she got sick and the doctors couldn't make her better. Dad says she's in heaven now. But I don't know where that is. Kara's vision blurred. She blinked hard. I'm sure she's somewhere beautiful. And I'm sure she misses you very much. Do you miss your family? Every day. Miho leaned against her shoulder, a tiny trusting weight. Then we can miss them together. And just like that, Kara's carefully constructed wall of rage cracked a little wider. Over the following days, Kara found herself drawn deeper into Miho's world. She read him stories at bedtime, English-language picture books about knights and dragons and princesses who saved themselves. She taught him to fold origami animals, cranes and frogs and elephants, because her father had taught her when she was small. She sat with him during meals when Junho was too busy, coaxing him to eat with gentle persistence. And Miho bloomed. He started smiling more, laughing, even a bright bubbling sound that made the staff pause and stare because they hadn't heard it in over a year. He followed Kara around the estate like a small shadow, chattering about his day, asking endless questions about Ghana and Africa and whether she'd ever seen a real lion. Only in zoos, Kara admitted one afternoon as they sat in his room, surrounded by toys he hadn't touched in months. But my father used to tell me stories about them. He said lions were symbols of courage. Like Guardian, Miho said, hugging his stuffed animal. Exactly like Guardian. Miho was quiet for a moment, then asked, Do you think my mom would like you? The question blindsided her. Kara's throat closed. I don't know, sweetheart. I think she would. Miho looked up at her with those two solemn eyes. You're nice. And you don't treat me like I'm broken. You're not broken, Kara said fiercely. You're just sad. And that's okay. Miho climbed into her lap, something he'd started doing recently, and rested his head against her chest. I'm glad you're here, Kara. She held him, this child of her enemy, and felt the last of her certainty crumble. Junho noticed the change too. Kara would catch him watching from doorways as she played with Miho in the garden, would see him pause outside the boys' room when she sang Miho to sleep, her father's Ghanaian lullabies filling the quiet. Once she'd turned to find him standing in the hallway, expression unreadable, as Miho's laughter echoed through the house. Their eyes met. Neither spoke. Then Junho walked away. But 2 days later, Mrs. Cho delivered new instructions. Mr. Kong requests you join him and the young master for dinner. 6 o'clock. Main dining room. Kara's pulse spiked. Is that normal? Mrs. Cho's lips twitched. The staff doesn't dine with the family. So no. But Mr. Kong was very clear. You're to be there. That evening, Kara stood outside the dining room in her plain black uniform, palms sweating. Through the door, she could hear Miho's excited voice. Is Kara really coming? You promised. I promised, Junho said, patient. She'll be here. Kara pushed the door open. The dining room was smaller than she'd expected, intimate despite the expensive table and crystal chandelier. Junho sat at the head, still in his work suit but with his tie loosened, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. Miho bounced in his chair beside him, waving frantically when he spotted her. Kara, you're here. Sit next to me. She crossed the room on unsteady legs and took the indicated seat. A place had been set for her, fine china and gleaming silverware that felt like a trap. Junho poured her wine without asking. Miho insisted. I wanted us to eat together, Miho explained. Like a family. The word hung in the air. Kara saw Junho's hand tighten on the wine bottle before he set it down carefully. Families eat together, Miho continued, oblivious. That's what my book says. Your book is right, Junho said quietly. Then to Kara, thank you for joining us. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Dinner was surreal. Miho dominated the conversation, telling his father everything he and Kara had done that day, the origami, the garden, the story about the lion. Junho listened with an attention that seemed almost desperate, as if memorizing every word. And every so often, his gaze would flick to Kara, assessing, questioning, searching for something she couldn't name. Halfway through the meal, Miho knocked over his water glass. It shattered, liquid spreading across the table. The boy froze, face going white. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. It's okay, Junho said immediately, already signaling a staff member. It's just a glass, Miho. You're not in trouble. But Miho had started shaking, eyes filling with tears. Mom got mad when I broke things. She yelled and then she cried and then she got sick and… Miho. Junho moved to his son's side, kneeling so they were eye level. Your mother was sick. Not because of you. Never because of you. And I'm not mad. Do you understand? Miho nodded but the tears spilled over. Junho pulled him into a hug, and over the boy's head his eyes met Kara's. The pain in them was staggering. I don't know how to do this, he said so quietly she almost missed it. The confession shattered something in her. This man who commanded an empire built on fear didn't know how to comfort his traumatized son. Kara stood and moved to them, crouching down beside Miho. Hey, she said gently. Want to know a secret? Miho pulled back slightly, sniffling. What? When I was little, I broke my dad's favorite mug. It was the one his mother gave him before she died, so it was really, really special. And I felt so bad I hid under my bed for 2 hours. What happened? Miho asked. My dad found me. And you know what he said? What? He said, Kara, I love you more than any mug. More than anything I own. You could break everything in this house and I would still love you. And he meant it. Miho looked at his father. Really? Junho's voice was rough. I love you more than anything in this world, Miho. Nothing you could do would change that. Miho threw his arms around both of them, and suddenly Kara was wrapped in an embrace with the man she'd come to kill and the son she'd never meant to love. And God help her, she didn't want to let go. After Miho was put to bed, Junho found Kara in the hallway. A moment, he said. She followed him to his study, a room she'd only seen from the doorway. Dark wood, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that looked like it had survived a war. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed her one. You don't have to, she started. Drink, he said. Please. She did. It burned. Junho leaned against his desk, studying her. Miho hasn't spoken about his mother in months. Hasn't cried about her either. I thought he was getting better. But the therapist says he was just burying it. Grief doesn't follow a schedule, Kara said quietly. No, it doesn't. He took a long drink. My wife died 2 weeks before Miho's 5th birthday. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4 by the time they caught it. We had 3 months. I tried everything, experimental treatments, specialists from around the world. I would have burned my entire empire to save her. His voice cracked. But money can't buy miracles. So I watched her waste away. Watched my son lose his mother piece by piece. And when she finally died, I told myself I could handle it. Keep the business running, raise Miho, move forward. But you can't, Kara said. No. He looked at her, and the vulnerability in his eyes made her chest ache. I'm good at running an empire. I'm good at making people afraid. But I don't know how to make my son stop having nightmares. I don't know how to help him remember his mother without falling apart. I don't know how to be both parents. You're doing better than you think, Kara said. Am I? Because from where I stand, the only time I've seen my son truly happy in the last year is when he's with you. The words settled between them, heavy with implication. Who are you, Kara Adams? Junho asked softly. Really? Her heart stopped. What do you mean? You appeared out of nowhere with perfect credentials and no history. You speak English like a native, but your Korean is good enough to pass for a local. You're educated, I can tell by the way you talk, the books you read to Miho. You don't belong in a housekeeper's uniform, and we both know it. Kara's mind raced. I needed work. That's all. Why Seoul? Why not? Because you're running from something, Junho said, moving closer. Or running toward something. Which is it? She should have lied. Should have deflected. Should have created some tragic backstory about an abusive ex or crushing debt. But standing there, trapped by those dark, knowing eyes, she couldn't. Does it matter? She asked instead. Yes. He was close enough now that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and understated. Because my son is attached to you. And if you're planning to disappear, I need to know now so I can prepare him. I'm not going anywhere, Kara said. The lie tasted like poison. Junho searched her face. Then slowly, he reached out and tucked a stray braid behind her ear. His fingertips grazed her cheek and she stopped breathing. Good, he said quietly. Because I don't think I could handle watching him break again. He dropped his hand and stepped back, the moment shattering. Thank you for what you did tonight. At dinner. With the glass. He needed to hear he was safe. He needed to hear it from you. Junho's smile was sad. He trusts you. And trust is rare in this house. What about you? The question escaped before she could stop it. Do you trust me? Junho looked at her for a long moment. I want to. Ask me again in a month. He left her standing there, heart hammering, lies burning on her tongue. That night, Kara lay awake staring at the ceiling. 2 weeks had become 3. 3 had become 4. And she still hadn't poisoned Junho's tea. Hadn't even acquired the ricin. Because every time she imagined him dying, she saw Miho's face crumpling. Saw the boy who'd already lost his mother losing his father too. Saw herself becoming the monster she'd come to destroy. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Still alive, I see. When are you going to finish what you started? Kara's blood ran cold. Only one person knew she was here. The contact who'd helped her forge her credentials and get into the estate. A man who worked for a rival organization. One that wanted Junho dead for reasons that had nothing to do with justice. She typed back, I need more time. The response was immediate. You've had months. Do the job or we'll find someone who will. And they won't be gentle about collateral damage. Collateral damage. Miho. Kara threw the phone across the room and pressed her hands to her face. She'd thought this would be simple. Kill the man who'd killed her father and disappear. But nothing about this was simple. Because Junho wasn't a faceless villain in a story. He was a grieving widower who loved his son desperately and carried the weight of an empire with shoulders that looked ready to break. And Miho wasn't collateral damage. He was a little boy who called her the princess lady and fell asleep holding her hand. And Kara, despite every oath she'd made over her father's grave, was falling. The breaking point came 2 days later. Kara was in Miho's room, helping him sort through his mother's jewelry box. He'd asked to look at it, a request that had made Junho's face go carefully blank before he'd nodded and left them alone. This was her favorite, Miho said, holding up a delicate silver necklace with a small ruby pendant. Dad gave it to her on their anniversary. She wore it every day. It's beautiful, Kara said. Do you think she'd want me to keep it? Or give it to someone? Who would you give it to? Miho looked up at her, eyes wide and serious. You. Kara's throat closed. Miho. You make Dad smile, Miho said. And you make me feel safe. Mom would have liked that. She always said family is the people who love you. Not just the people who have the same blood. I can't take your mother's necklace. Please. Miho's lower lip trembled. I want you to have it. Because. He took a shaky breath. Because I want you to be part of our family. Before Kara could respond, the door burst open. Sangmin stood in the threshold, face tight with urgency. Where's the boss? He demanded. Meeting, Kara said, standing. What's wrong? That's none of your. Sangmin cut himself off, noticing Miho. His expression softened slightly. Get him away from the windows. Now. Fear spiked through her. Why? Just do it. Kara scooped Miho into her arms and carried him to the bathroom, the only room without windows. It's okay, she murmured, even as her heart raced. We're just playing a game. I don't like this game, Miho whispered. I know, baby. I know. Shouts echoed from downstairs. Gunfire, sharp cracks that made Kara's ears ring. Miho screamed and buried his face in her neck. She held him tighter, mind spinning. An attack. Someone was attacking the estate. The door slammed open again. Junho this time, face hard as granite, gun in his hand. You're okay, he said, and she realized he was talking to both of them. You're both okay. What's happening? Kara demanded. Rival group. They breached the south gate. He moved to the window, checking sightlines. Sangmin's handling it. You need to get Miho out of here. I'm not leaving you. Junho's voice was steel. I don't matter. You matter to him. Junho looked at his son, trembling in Kara's arms. And that means you matter to me. More gunfire. Closer now. Junho swore and moved to the door. Stay in the bathroom. Lock it. Don't open it for anyone but me. Junho. He turned back, and in 3 strides he was in front of her. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek. And for one insane moment she thought he was going to kiss her. Keep him safe, he said instead. Please. Then he was gone. Kara locked the door with shaking hands and sank to the floor. Miho clutched in her arms. The boy was sobbing, words spilling out in a terrified stream. I don't want Dad to die. I don't want him to leave like Mom. Please, Kara, please don't let him die. He's not going to die, Kara said fiercely. Your father is strong. He's going to come back. Please God, let him come back. The gunfire stopped. Silence fell, thick and suffocating. Kara counted her heartbeats. 100. 200. 3. A knock at the door. It's me. She unlocked it with fumbling fingers. Junho stood there, blood on his shirt but alive. Whole. Miho launched himself at his father, sobbing. Junho caught him, holding him close while his eyes found Kara's over the boy's head. You're hurt, she said, noticing the blood spreading across his left shoulder. Surface wound. I've had worse. Let me see. Later. But he didn't pull away when she peeled back his jacket, exposing the gash across his upper arm. A bullet grazed, shallow but bleeding heavily. Bathroom, she ordered. Sit. Junho obeyed, settling on the edge of the bathtub with Miho still clinging to him. Kara grabbed the first aid kit from under the sink. Mrs. Cho had mentioned every room had one. A sad commentary on their lives. She cleaned the wound with steady hands while Junho watched her, something shifting in his expression. You're good at this, he said quietly. My father was clumsy. I learned young. The lie came easily now. Your father, Junho repeated. You never talk about him. Kara's hand stilled. He died. There's not much to say. I'm sorry. The words were so simple, so sincere. Kara wanted to scream, to tell him that his sympathy was poison, that he'd killed her father, that every moment she spent in this house was a betrayal of everything Samuel Mensah had stood for. But Miho was watching her with those wide, trusting eyes, and Junho was letting her bandage his arm without flinching, and somewhere in the last month Kara had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. "Me too," she whispered. That night after Miho finally fell asleep, emotionally exhausted, Junho found Kara in the kitchen. She was making tea, hands still shaking from adrenaline. "Chamomile?" he asked. "Rooibos. My father's favorite." Junho poured himself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. "I need to ask you something." "Here it comes," Kara thought. He knows. He's figured it out. "Would you consider moving into the family wing?" Junho asked instead. She stared at him. "What?" "Miho's room is across from mine. There's a guest room between us that's never been used. I'd like you to take it." "Why?" "Because tonight scared him. And he asked if you could be closer. Said he sleeps better when he knows you're nearby." Junho ran a hand through his hair. "I know it's a lot to ask. You have boundaries, a life outside this house." "I don't," Kara said before she could stop herself. Junho's eyes sharpened. "What?" "I don't have a life outside this house. I don't have friends waiting for me or family to visit. I came to Seoul with nothing, and I'm still here because..." She trailed off. Because I was supposed to kill you. Because I'm a liar and a fraud and I'm falling for your son, and maybe for you, and I don't know how to stop. Because Miho needs me," she said instead. Junho crossed the space between them in 2 strides. He was so close she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the heat radiating from him. "Is that the only reason?" he asked quietly. Her breath caught. "What other reason would there be?" "I don't know. You tell me." His hand came up, fingers brushing her jaw. "Because the past month, watching you with my son, seeing the way you've brought life back into this house, I've started to feel things I swore I'd never feel again." "Junho, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I just need you to know that you're not just here for Miho. You're here because I want you here. Because when you walk into a room I breathe easier. Because you're the first person in 14 months who's made me feel like maybe I'm not completely broken." Kara's eyes burned. "You're not broken. Then what am I?" "You're a father who loves his son. A man who's grieving his wife. A person who's trying his best in an impossible situation." She reached up, covering his hand with hers. "You're human, Junho. That's all." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "When you say my name like that, I almost believe I could be good again." "You are good. I'm not." His voice turned harsh. "You don't know the things I've done, Kara. The blood on my hands. The lives I've destroyed. If you knew." "I know enough." And she did. She knew he'd ordered her father's death. Knew he trafficked weapons and people. Knew his empire was built on suffering. But she also knew he held his son when he had nightmares. That he'd taken a bullet defending his home. That he looked at her like she was something precious instead of hired help. And God, she was so tired of hating him. "Move into the family wing," Junho said. "Please. Not for Miho. For me. Because I'm selfish enough to want you closer." Kara knew this was a trap. Knew that accepting meant going deeper into a life she was supposed to be dismantling. But she looked into his eyes and heard herself say, "Okay." Junho's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you." Then slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and pressed his lips to her forehead. Not a kiss, not quite, but an intimacy that stole her breath. "Good night, Kara," he murmured against her skin. She couldn't speak, could only watch as he left the kitchen, his presence lingering like smoke. Kara sank into a chair and put her head in her hands. She was supposed to be here for revenge, for justice, for her father. But somewhere between reading bedtime stories and bandaging bullet wounds, she'd stopped being an assassin and started being something far more dangerous. She'd started being family. And the worst part? She didn't want to leave. 2 weeks later, Junho's organization held its annual meeting. Kara wasn't supposed to attend, but Miho had refused to let go of her hand all morning, anxious about his father's absence. So Junho had made a call, And suddenly Kara was standing in the hallway outside a conference room filled with 30 of Seoul's most dangerous men. "Stay close," Junho had murmured before disappearing inside. "If anything feels wrong, take Miho and run." But nothing felt wrong until Miho pulled free of her grip and ran straight into the conference room. "Dad!" he shouted, and every conversation stopped. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward the small boy standing in the doorway. Kara's heart lodged in her throat. She moved to grab him, but Miho had already run to his father's chair. "Miho," Junho said carefully, "what are you doing here?" "I have something to say," Miho announced. Then, turning to face the room with the fearlessness only children possessed, he declared, "I want Kara to be my new mom." The silence was deafening. Kara couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She saw Sangmin's expression shift from surprise to something calculating. Saw several men exchange glances, measuring, judging. "Son," Junho said, voice strained, "this isn't the place." "You said I could have anything if I was brave," Miho interrupted. "You promised. And I'm being brave. I'm telling everyone I want a mom again. And I want it to be Kara." Tears spilled down his cheeks. "Please, Dad. Please. I miss having a mom. And Kara is nice and she reads to me, and she doesn't treat me like I'm weird because I'm sad and I love her and I want her to stay forever." Kara's vision blurred. She felt every eye in the room on her, judging her worthiness, questioning her motives. She wanted to run, to grab Miho and disappear before this powder keg exploded. But then Junho stood. Slowly, deliberately, he moved to his son and knelt down. "You really want this?" he asked quietly. Miho nodded, clutching his father's suit jacket. "Please." Junho looked at Kara. The weight of his gaze was crushing, asking a question she didn't know how to answer. Then he stood and addressed the room. "My son has spoken," he said, voice carrying absolute authority. "And in this house, his happiness is law." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Junho silenced them with a look. "Kara Adams will move into the family wing permanently. She will be afforded every protection and privilege of this household. Anyone who questions this decision answers to me." It was a declaration, claiming. And Kara realized with dawning horror that she'd just been publicly marked as Junho's. The meeting dissolved. Men filed out, some congratulating Junho, others avoiding his eyes. Sangmin lingered, watching Kara with an expression she couldn't read. When they were finally alone, Junho, Kara, and Miho in the empty conference room, the boy threw his arms around both of them. "We're going to be a real family," he said happily. Over his head, Junho's eyes met Kara's. "Are we?" he asked softly. Kara should have said no. Should have explained this was impossible, that she couldn't be what Miho needed, what Junho wanted. Should have run while she still could. Instead, she found herself nodding. "Yes," she whispered. "If you'll have me." Something blazed in Junho's eyes. "I'll have you." And God help her, Kara believed him. That night, Kara lay in her new room in the family wing, staring at the ceiling. Through the wall, she could hear Miho's soft snores. Down the hall, she could sense Junho's presence like a second heartbeat. Her phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. "Time's up. Friday. Finish the job or we finish it for you. And the kid dies first." Kara's blood turned to ice. Friday was 3 days away. 3 days to poison Junho. Or her contact would send someone else. Someone who wouldn't hesitate to kill a 6-year-old to send a message. She couldn't do it. Couldn't poison the tea, couldn't watch Junho die. Couldn't destroy Miho's world again. But if she didn't, Miho would die anyway. Kara pressed her hands to her face and tried not to scream. She thought she could control this. Thought she could walk the line between revenge and mercy. But there was no line. There was only a cliff and she'd just run out of ground. A soft knock at her door made her jump. She opened it to find Junho barefoot, wearing sleep pants and a t-shirt that made him look younger, more vulnerable. "Couldn't sleep," he said. "Me neither. Can I come in?" She should have said no. Should have kept the distance that might save them both. But she stepped aside, and Junho entered her space like he'd been invited into a sanctuary. He sat on the edge of her bed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Today was insane, Kara finished. I was going to say unexpected. He looked up at her. I didn't plan for Miho to do that. To put you on the spot like that. I know. But I'm not sorry it happened. Junho's voice dropped. I should apologize for dragging you into this, for making you part of a life you never asked for. But I'm not sorry, Kara, because the truth is I want you here. Not just for Miho. For me. Kara's breath caught. Junho. I'm falling for you, he said bluntly. I've been falling for weeks, maybe since the night you bandaged my arm and looked at me like I was worth saving. And I know it's too fast and probably inappropriate given the power dynamic, but I don't care anymore. I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this. He stood, closing the distance between them. So tell me to stop. Tell me I'm reading this wrong and I'll walk away. I'll keep my distance. I'll make sure you're comfortable and safe and never bother you again. Kara knew what she should say. Knew the words that would end this before it consumed them both. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, I'm falling too. Junho's eyes went dark. Kara, I don't want you to stop, she whispered. I don't want you to walk away. I want. He kissed her. It was nothing like the gentle press of lips she'd imagined. This was desperate, hungry, weeks of tension shattering in an instant. His hands tangled in her braids, pulling her closer, and she grabbed his shirt, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Junho rested his forehead against hers. I don't know what I'm doing, he confessed. I haven't felt this way since my wife, and I'm terrified I'm going to mess it up. Me too, Kara said, because she was terrified of how much she wanted this. Terrified of the lies stacked between them. Terrified of Friday's deadline and the choice she'd have to make. Stay, Junho murmured. Not just in this house. Stay with me. With us. Be part of this family. Kara kissed him again, softer this time, trying to pour everything she couldn't say into the touch. I'll stay. It was the biggest lie she'd ever told. Because Friday was coming and one way or another everything was about to burn. Friday arrived like a death sentence. Kara woke before dawn, body cold with dread. She had 12 hours before her contact's deadline. 12 hours to decide whether to kill the man she loved or watch him and his son die. She'd spent the last 3 days trying to find a third option. Had considered going to the police, but Junho's crimes were real and documented. He'd be arrested, and Miho would be taken by the state. Had considered telling Junho the truth. But how did you confess to infiltrating someone's life with murder in your heart? There was no way out. Only choices that all ended in blood. Kara dressed mechanically and went downstairs. Miho was already awake, playing with Guardian in the breakfast room. He brightened when he saw her. Kara, can we make pancakes? She forced a smile. Of course, baby. They cooked together. Miho chattering about a dream he'd had where they all went to the zoo. Kara listened, memorizing every detail. The way his nose scrunched when he concentrated. The gap in his smile where he'd lost a tooth last week. The absolute trust in his eyes when he looked at her. She was going to lose this. One way or another, she was going to lose everything. Junho appeared at 8, freshly showered, still buttoning his shirt. He kissed Miho's head. Then without hesitation kissed Kara's cheek. Morning, he said, casual intimacy in every syllable. Morning. They'd fallen into this rhythm over the past week. Stolen kisses in hallways, hands brushing during dinner, quiet conversations after Miho went to bed. Felt like a relationship. Like something real. It was built on lies. At noon, Sangmin requested a private meeting with Junho. Kara watched them disappear into the study, anxiety gnawing at her. Sangmin had been watching her more closely lately, his expression calculating in a way that made her skin crawl. She tried to distract herself with Miho reading stories, playing games. But every tick of the clock was a countdown. At 4 o'clock her phone buzzed. 6 hours. Make your choice. Kara excused herself and locked herself in the bathroom. Her hands shook as she typed out a response. I can't do it. Find someone else. The reply was immediate. Too late. He's already on site. If Kong survives the night, the boy dies tomorrow. Your choice. Kara's vision went dark at the edges. They'd sent a backup. A real assassin who wouldn't hesitate. Who would kill Miho without blinking. Unless Kara stopped them. She emerged from the bathroom to find Junho in the hallway. You okay? He asked, concern creasing his forehead. Fine. Just tired. He touched her face, gentle. You've been off all day. What's wrong? Everything. I'm here to destroy you and instead I'm in love with you and I don't know how to save us. Nothing, she lied. Just a headache. Junho didn't look convinced, but he let it go. Sangmin mentioned some security concerns. I'm doubling the guards tonight. Kara's heart stopped. What kind of concerns? Chatter about a possible attack. Nothing concrete, but I'm not taking chances. His eyes hardened. Not with you and Miho here. He was protecting them. Protecting her. And she was the threat he should have seen coming. Kara made her decision. She couldn't kill Junho. Couldn't even watch someone else do it. But she could warn him. Could blow her cover, expose herself and give him a chance to survive. Even if it meant she'd die in his place. At 6 o'clock, Kara went to the study where Junho was working. She locked the door behind her. He looked up surprised. Kara? What's? There's going to be an attack tonight, she said. No preamble. No gentle lead-in. Junho stood slowly. How do you know that? Because I'm the one who was supposed to kill you. The words hung in the air like gunshots. Junho's expression didn't change, but she saw the moment it registered. The moment everything he thought he knew shattered. Explain, he said, voice deadly calm. So she did. All of it. Her father's death, the investigation that led to Junho's name. The months of planning, the false identity. The way she'd infiltrated his home with murder in her heart. But I couldn't do it, she finished, voice breaking. I tried. I planned it 100 times. But then Miho asked me to braid his hair. And you looked at me like I mattered. And I fell in love with both of you and now I can't. Junho held up a hand, silencing her. His face was carved from stone. Your father, he said. Samuel Mensah. Diplomatic aide. Kara's blood ran cold. You remember him. I remembered the name. Junho moved to his desk, pulled out a file and handed it to her. Because I didn't order his death. Kara stared at the documents. Investigation reports. Witness statements. A memo from 18 months ago in Junho's handwriting. Samuel Mensah is not a threat. He's unarmed, nonviolent, and his information is incomplete. Do not engage. We handle this through legal channels or not at all. Below it another memo. Sangmin's handwriting. Understood, boss. And then, 3 days later, a death certificate. Car accident. Samuel Mensah. I don't understand, Kara whispered. Sangmin went behind my back, Junho said, voice tight with rage. He thought your father was a liability. Took it upon himself to solve the problem without my knowledge. By the time I found out, it was already done and covered up. Kara felt the world tilt. You didn't kill him. No. But my organization did. My lieutenant did. And I didn't stop it because I didn't know. Junho's hands clenched into fists. I'm sorry, Kara. God, I'm so sorry. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Her entire mission, her entire reason for being here, had been built on a lie. Sangmin, she said slowly. He's the one who recruited you, Junho finished, realization dawning. Of course. He's been positioning for a takeover for months. What better way than to use you as a weapon? Then leverage your failure to discredit me with the organization. A knock at the door made them both freeze. Sangmin's voice filtered through. Boss? We have a situation. Junho and Kara's eyes met. Then he called out. Come in. Sangmin entered, gun already drawn. He saw Kara, saw the file on the desk and smiled. So she finally told you, he said. I wondered how long it would take. You used her, Junho said, voice like ice. I gave her a target. She failed to eliminate it. That's on her. You killed her father. I protected this organization. Sangmin's smile widened. And now I'm going to finish the job she couldn't. He raised the gun. Kara moved without thinking, throwing herself in front of Junho. The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. Pain exploded in her shoulder. She fell and the world went red. Through the haze she heard shouting. Heard Junho roaring Sangmin's name. Heard the thud of bodies hitting the floor. More gunshots. Screaming. Then Junho was there, kneeling beside her, hands pressing against her shoulder. Stay with me, he said desperately. Kara, stay with me. Miho, she gasped. Where's? Safe. He's safe. Security has him. Junho's face was white. Why did you do that? Why did you take the bullet? Because I love you, Kara said. Simple. True. And I couldn't let him kill you. Junho's eyes filled with tears. You stupid, brave, beautiful woman. Kara tried to laugh but coughed instead. Blood flecked her lips. Is Sangmin dead? I made sure of it. Junho gathered her into his arms, careful of her shoulder. Help is coming. Just hold on. I'm sorry, she whispered. For lying. For coming here to hurt you. For. Stop. Junho kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You saved me. You saved Miho. You gave us back our lives. I don't care about the rest. Your organization can burn for all I care. His voice was fierce. You matter more. Miho matters more. That's it. That's all that matters. Sirens wailed in the distance. Kara felt herself fading, the pain dulling to a distant throb. Junho, she murmured. I'm here. If I don't, you will. But if I don't, promise me you'll take care of Miho. Promise me. I promise, Junho said. But you're going to be here to help me. You're going to survive this because I can't do this without you. Do you hear me, Kara? I can't. His voice broke on the last word. Kara reached up with her good hand and touched his face. Then I'll stay, she said. And meant it. Kara woke in a hospital room. The first thing she saw was Junho, slumped in a chair beside her bed, hand wrapped around hers. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, dark circles under his eyes, jaw shadowed with stubble. The second thing she saw was Miho, curled up on Junho's lap, clutching Guardian. They were both asleep, both holding on to her like she might disappear. Kara's movement must have woken Junho because his eyes snapped open. When he saw she was awake, his entire face crumpled. You're okay, he said hoarsely. Thank God you're okay. How long? 3 days. You've been out for 3 days. Junho stood carefully, settling Miho in the chair, and moved to her bedside. The bullet nicked an artery. You lost a lot of blood. They said if I'd gotten you here 5 minutes later. He couldn't finish. Kara squeezed his hand. But you didn't. I'm here. You're here. Junho pressed his forehead to hers. Do you have any idea what the last 3 days have been like? Miho won't leave the hospital. Won't eat unless I force him. He keeps asking when you're going to wake up. As if summoned, Miho stirred. His eyes opened, found Kara, and went wide. Kara. He scrambled out of the chair and would have climbed onto the bed if Junho hadn't caught him. Gentle, Junho warned. She's still hurt. But Miho didn't care. He threw his arms around Kara's neck, sobbing. You came back. You came back like you promised. Of course I did, Kara whispered, tears streaming down her face. I promised, didn't I? Don't leave again, Miho begged. Please don't leave. I won't. I'm not going anywhere. Junho pulled them both into his arms, careful of Kara's bandaged shoulder, and they stayed like that, the three of them, holding each other like they could keep the world at bay through sheer force of will. Later, after Miho had been coaxed into eating something and fallen asleep in the chair again, Junho told Kara what had happened. Sangmin's coup had failed. The men he'd recruited had been arrested or killed in the firefight. The organization was in chaos, but Junho had taken control, leveraging his father's old alliances and his own reputation. I'm making changes, he said. Getting out of the trafficking, the weapons trade, All of it. I'm going legitimate. Can you do that? I can try. Junho looked at her. Miho deserves better than a father who builds empires on suffering. And you deserve better than a man with blood on his hands. Junho. I know I can't erase what I've done. Can't bring back the people I've hurt, including your father. But I can try to be better. For him. For you. Kara's chest ached. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be honest. Then honestly, I love you. Junho took her hand. I love you and I want you in my life, in Miho's life permanently. Not as an employee. Not as a convenient caretaker. As my partner. My equal. My wife. Kara asked. Junho's breath caught. Are you asking you to marry me? She smiled through her tears. Yes. Because life is short and unpredictable. And I almost died without telling you that I love you more than I ever thought possible. So yes, Kang Junho, I'm asking you to marry me. Junho laughed, the sound breaking on a sob. Yes. God, yes. He kissed her, gentle and reverent, like she was something precious he'd almost lost. When they pulled apart, Miho was awake, watching them with a sleepy smile. Does this mean Kara's really going to be my mom? He asked. Yes, Kara said. If you'll have me. Miho's smile could have lit the city. I'll have you. 6 months later, Kara stood in front of a mirror in a small bridal suite, adjusting the Kent cloth sash woven into her white dress. The wedding was small, private. Just a few of Junho's most trusted people, Miho in a tiny suit, and a minister who asked no questions. The ceremony would be held in the garden where Kara had first bonded with Miho, under the cherry tree that had bloomed despite the winter. A knock at the door. Mrs. Cho entered, eyes suspiciously bright. You look beautiful, she said. Thank you. Kara touched the silver necklace at her throat, the one with the ruby pendant. Miho's mother's necklace, given to her freely. He's a good man, Mrs. Cho said. Better than he was. You did that. We did it together. Outside, music began to play. Kara took a deep breath and stepped out into the garden. Junho waited at the altar, Miho beside him holding the rings. When Junho saw her, his face did something that made Kara's heart skip. Wonder. Joy. Love so fierce it took her breath away. She walked to him. No aisle. No procession. Just her, moving toward the life she'd never planned but couldn't imagine living without. The vows were simple. Promises to love, to honor, to protect. To be family not just in word but in deed. When the minister pronounced them married, Junho kissed her like they had all the time in the world. Like they'd earned every second of happiness. And maybe they had. Miho threw flower petals with such enthusiasm that half of them ended up in his own hair. The small crowd laughed, and for the first time in 18 months, the sound wasn't forced or hollow. It was real. The reception was held inside, casual and warm. Kara found herself standing by the window, watching Miho play with some of the staff's children, his laughter echoing through the house. Junho came up behind her, arms wrapping around her waist. Penny for your thoughts, he murmured. Just thinking about how I got here, Kara said. How I came to Seoul wanting to destroy you. And instead you gave me everything I didn't know I needed. We gave each other everything, Junho corrected. He turned her in his arms. I was dying before you got here. Just going through the motions. You brought me back to life. You did the same for me. They stood together, watching their son play, and Kara thought about her father. Thought about what he would say if he could see her now. She liked to think he'd understand. That he'd see Junho wasn't the man who'd killed him. That he'd see the family they'd built from grief and impossible choices. That he'd see she was happy. Finally completely happy. What are you thinking? Junho asked. That I wish my father could meet you, Kara said. I think he would have liked you. I would have liked him too. Junho pressed a kiss to her temple. I'm sorry I can't bring him back. Sorry for everything you lost. I know. But I found something too. I found you. And Miho. And a future I never thought I'd have. Miho ran over, tugging on Kara's dress. Mom, can we have cake now? Mom. The word still made her chest ache in the best way. Yes, baby. Let's have cake. They moved to the table, the three of them, and cut the cake together. Miho got frosting on his nose. Junho actually laughed and wiped it off. Kara took a mental photograph, storing the moment away. Later, much later, after the guests had gone and Miho had been tucked into bed, exhausted and happy, Kara and Junho stood in the garden. Do you ever regret it? Junho asked quietly. Giving up your revenge? Choosing this life instead? Kara looked at the house, warm with light, where their son slept safely. Looked at her husband, the man she'd come to kill and stayed to love. No, she said. Revenge wouldn't have brought my father back. Wouldn't have healed anything. But this? She gestured to the house, to him, to everything they'd built. This is healing. This is life. I love you, Junho said. I love you too. They walked inside together, hand in hand, and closed the door on the past. Whatever came next, they'd face it as a family. And that was more than enough.